While games like Super Mario Galaxy or Zelda Tears of the Kingdom are AAA titles that are destined to sell millions upon millions and leave an eternal legacy, I've always had a soft spot for the weirder, more experimental games Nintendo does from time to time. Games like Luigi's Mansion or Wario World come straight to mind. They may not be anything exceptional or life-changing, but there's something so novel or charming about a game that you look at and say, why the heck does this even exist? It's very clear the Switch 2 is on the horizon, and therefore it's pretty obvious Nintendo has been releasing little bite-sized filler titles to make money. So far this year, we've gotten a GBA remake, a GameCube remake, a 3DS port, and Princess Peach Showtime. You may assume from the advertising of this game that this is Peach's first time starring in a game on her own, and that's because Nintendo wants you to forget they already made a Peach game where there's an allegory of a goddamn... Yeah, this of course was Super Princess Peach, a DS game which I reviewed exactly 10 videos ago. This game was okay. There were some questionable themes in it for sure, but it was a decent side-scroller that was worth playing until you get to the end, and realize the developers expected you to 100% the entire game to see the final level. Well, Princess Peach Showtime is the first Peach game, so let's see if this is really worth 60 smackaroos. Booting up the game, we see Peach's castle ripped right out of Super Mario Odyssey, where Toad comes up to Peach with a letter. How does it feel, Peach? Now you're the one receiving stationery. What a role reversal. You know, this is the third series of Mario that starts with someone getting a piece of stationery, only to be followed by sheer chaos for said character. My advice to everyone in this universe, if someone comes up to you with a piece of paper, get the fuck out. This turns out to be an advertisement for the Sparkle Theater, and I guess as a patron of the arts, Peach decides to take a vacation here, screwing over Toads in the process. Everything seems all fine and good, then the obligatory something has to go wrong timer runs out, the portal from Super Paper Mario opens up, and we meet our villain, Grape. I will give the developers credit for this one. It's really funny that the first villain of this new Peach series is called Grape. I don't know. I find it funny. Peach loses her crown, the Toads die, like literally they don't appear for the rest of the entire story, so that's that I guess, and we have our premise for the game. I have to give the developers Good Feel Games credit here, as it's incredibly refreshing to have a game that just starts within 5 minutes. I was watching back my footage and I was like, oh my goodness. It's very to the point, and once in a while it's just nice to be able to get into the action quickly. And Good Feel Games, if you're not familiar, previously have developed Wario Land Shake It, Kirby's Epic Yarn, Yoshi's Woolly World, and a game that nobody liked. Now, I think it's important to note this because this repertoire of games all shares one thing in common. They're respectable games sort of new to their respective franchises that are entirely based on some sort of visual gimmick. And to be honest, they usually do a really good job at bringing these obscure Nintendo franchises to life. I had some issues with Kirby's Epic Yarn. It was a great game, but it didn't really feel like it needed to be a Kirby game, but it was an exceptional platformer nonetheless. But Yoshi's Woolly World was one of my favorite games on the Wii U, and it had so much love and charm put into it. It did provide us with this little guy. Now, I didn't play Grafted World, and it goes against my argument, so it never happened. So naturally, you could expect some sort of aesthetic or gimmick for Princess Peach Showtime, and I love what they did here because this game is entirely based around being a stage play. Objects are comprised of cardboard, there are textures that look bad, but they just resemble drawings, there are stage lights, stuff that's hanging on strings, and I love and respect all of it. I will clarify for reference that I was indeed a theater kid. You can probably tell by my tendency to over-exaggerate literally everything. See? I just did it. I don't exaggerate literally everything. Yeah, I do. So what I'll say is that Princess Peach Showtime, when unveiled last fall with this premise in mind, immediately caught my eye, and I haven't gotten it back to this day. Plus, I already was a fan of Princess Peach, feeling that her first outing at least had potential, and she received a really good adaptation in the Super Mario movie. All this pretty much ensured that I was going to pick up this game for a price that I don't want to talk about yet, because we'll get to it when we get to it, and right now we're being happy. So here's how Princess Peach Showtime works. Every main level is centered around a costume, which gives Peach special abilities. In this storytelling world, there's always some traumatic, overdramatic event happening, usually to the village of the Theets, which are hilarious, and yes, that's actually what they're called, the Theets. They're adorable, and they better be in the next Mario spin-off, or else I get moody. Well, they weren't. I'm moody. Peach will begin these story threads with her only attack being Stella, which she can use to interact with her environment and give the Theets some strength. Each costume gives you different abilities, so there's a decent bit of variety in this game. Just to shake things up from the way we usually do things, I'm going to talk about each Peach costume from worst to best here. At number 10, we have Patisserie Peach. I know I pronounced that wrong, just leave me alone, it's the first time I've seen this word in my life. With this costume, Peach makes cookies for the villagers and flies over cakes, dropping frosting on them to match it up with the photos. I like to call this game the B-button mashing simulator. So there's a baseline amount of variety in this mode, but really this entire game comes down to just pressing the B button. There are instances where you have to time your baking, I guess, to be able to get more cookies to the ravaging villagers, and I don't know, I'm really trying to say more about this because I try to be in depth, but I'm gonna be honest, and this will probably be a theme for some of these costumes, I've been sitting at this script for 10 minutes and I can't think of anything else to say about it. Like, I'm sorry, but this was just not a good idea, and this is by far my least favorite Peach costume. It was like the Cooking Mama games, where Peach maybe had to work a little bit harder to make more varied recipes. I think the story thread would have had a bit more potential, but there's just no variety in both the controls and the actual concept. It's like they took a Mario Party minigame and said, hey, let's make this an entire mode. I guess visually these levels are cool, with the second act being Halloween-y. It's something. Okay, I'm done trying to write words now. Aye, those gens saith that Shakespeareth struggleth with doth writing blocketh. But this is just a load of bullshit. Number 9 is Detective Peach. I started off completely hating this one, and near the end I sort of liked it a bit more. Don't get too ahead of yourselves, game developers. That's like a 3 out of 10 when you translate it to me. With Detective Peach, you have to hunt for clues to solve a mystery, but occasionally there are other elements, such as stalking and evil feet. The first level specifically really turned me off to this gameplay style, as it was just really boring and did not captivate me in any sense of the imagination. There's really nothing stopping you either from just using your trial and error to progress. All you have to do is really hold B to do a strike of intuition if you feel like something is sus. The game does give you clues for what you should use your strike of intuition on, but honestly, you don't really have to pay attention to any of it if you go for this trial and error method. Like, if your strike is wrong, all it does is take away 1 heart, and if you lose your hearts, you just lose some coins. So it's really not a big deal to brute force your way through these levels, and once you know them once, you never have to actually do any gameplay again on various playthroughs. With losing hearts, I get that they needed something to punish the player with, but this just doesn't feel like it was the solution. But also, if this entire level ended if you were incorrect, that would be way too punishing. So I would have probably just preferred if this mode was entirely scrapped, but I know there will be a few Detective Peach fans in the chat who hunt for clues to dox me now. Good luck. The first level was just about finding some art or something. I don't know, but the second level I felt like actually had a bit more juice behind it. Basically, you have to stop a bomb from blowing up a building, hunting down the evil thiefs that are scheming in an apartment. Not sure how that made it into a Nintendo game, but you know what? It was a vastly more entertaining level than you would think. But yeah, maybe this mode just wasn't for me. Number 8 was Mermaid Peach, also known as Disney plagiarism. Was a red wig unavailable? So yeah, the aesthetics and scope here are neat, but the actual gameplay just really isn't that enjoyable. All you really do as Mermaid Peach is stop and sing, so you can manipulate the sea creatures into doing your busy work. These little fish can open shells, move vines, and if this sounds boring, that's because it is. Now, this very simply could have just been a coincidence. I don't think Nintendo was intentionally trying to copy Disney here. Not everything that's similar to something else has to be a clone. I just feel like this costume was a wasted concept. It could have been cool to do something like the Zora from Majora's Mask. Why does every game developer get together and decide water levels always have to be the biggest slogs to get through? It's an actual injustice. The actual aesthetics and music in water levels are always so beautiful and charming. But no, the gameplay, the thing people actually care about, is just sluggish trash in like every video game I've played. Maybe it's some sort of industry insider joke, but I'm tired of it, man. The only other thing of note is at the end of these levels, Peach sings, requiring you to time the direction she faces as the fish swim towards her in a giant orchestra. More plagiarism, but you know what? At least The Little Mermaid is an actual musical, so I guess it's more of a cheeky reference. Let's see how that holds up in court. Next up is Sword Fighter Peach. This mode is just okay. The levels are sort of just generic platforming levels with a bit more of an emphasis on fighting goons. I would have probably liked this costume a bit more if there was any depth to the sword fighting. I'm not saying it needed to be Skyward Sword or anything, but anything more than just pressing the B button would have gone a long way. The only reason I really place this level this low is because there's a pretty big emphasis on dodging attacks with a well-timed jump, usually with the bosses. It's not that hard, but sometimes it can actually be a tad precise or even awkward to figure out the timing, at least on your first playthrough. Again, not hard, just sort of a weird learning curve that made me enjoy these levels a bit less. So, did you enjoy Sword Fighter, Peach? Well, you better enjoy the next 5 Peach transformations as well then. Kung Fu Peach is pressing the B button and fighting more evil feats. Yep, I'm actually really struggling to say anything further about this. There's a few other ways of fighting, I guess. You can spin around a pole. Okay, I mean, I've never seen anyone in a Kung Fu movie do that, but I haven't seen that many Kung Fu movies anyway. You can jump between the poles and kick, I guess. Variety. The bosses are similar to the sword fighting Peach levels, as while they are kind of 2D classic fighting game style, you just kind of have to time your button inputs. It's all there is to it. They die quickly. A real Kung Fu artist would be laughing. So I do want to clarify real quick that I'm not really upset that a few of these are similar. I know I'm presenting a bit of a negative tone regarding some of these costumes, but I do find the side-scroller levels fun enough regardless. It's not like I play these and have a bad time, and I do prefer action levels to baking cookies or moving fish. If anything, I'm just complaining that a few of these feel pretty samey, and I feel like they could have chosen other costumes or just tried a bit harder to make these different. Ninja Peach, being next on our list, is fairly similar as well, but they do try to make this at least a bit more different. There's more of a stealth aspect here, and I did enjoy that as opposed to outright fighting. You can sneak in the water with a lily pad straw. Those actually exist because I really want one. You can also sneak by holding up a piece of paper against a wall. Okay, I don't know who that's fooling, but it works, I guess, as well as hiding in patches of grass ripped straight out of Pokemon. What's fun about this mode is that there is a bit of platforming diversity, being able to jump off of walls, and I did get some enjoyment out of that, keyword being some. At number 4, we have Cowgirl Peach. I won't lie, the voice acting for this is really funny.
Well, shucks.
Kind of a side note, but Peach has a much different voice representation than in previous Mario games, which at first made me think that they replaced Samantha Kelly, especially since Mario Wonder indicated that the Mario cast was being replaced at large. But no, it's still her apparently, just with a much different inflection and kind of a deeper voice. And honestly, it was very well done. Peach says something funny at the end of every level, and it makes this game stand out well enough without being distracting from the Mario lore either. These levels are fine, although very similar to the last few regardless. You now use your lasso to attack, which can also be used to pick up and throw barrels. There are a lot more horse riding missions here. This game in general really does love its automated levels, which are usually press the A button and jump. That's it. Honestly, I really got a kick out of the scenery here. It's the most this game comes to feeling like a genuine play, and I mean that as a compliment because most of them do feel pretty accurate. The set design and lighting is just perfections. I used to work on plays. In fact, I set up a light to record this video. I can say that. Number 3, we have Dashing Thief Peach. This is Batman. Now this is clearly a reference to Batman Live. No, it's definitely not. I just wanted to look cute and say that this exists. Anyways, I had a good time with this costume. It has the same old similarities to the others, but you can now latch onto platforms with your ropes, you can maneuver stealthily on certain architecture, and the movement just has a really good flow to it. Number 2 is Mighty Peach, which again is sort of a beat-em-up sort of costume, but look, Peach can pick up a goddamn bus so the thieves can run to safety. Now that's cool. Here's my $60 plus tax and shipping and handling. There's a lot they actually do with the Mighty Peach costume, and while it's still largely just a beat 'em up sort of deal, I had a good time with these levels. I think the reason this costume works so well is because the game just accepts its cheesiness here. I'm not saying this game takes itself that seriously or anything, it definitely doesn't, but when the game outright embraces being more of an exaggerated cartoon versus trying to convince me Peach could be a goddamn ninja, the vibe goes a long way here. My favorite Peach costume though, and number 1 on our list, is Figure Skater Peach. Now, sadly, even at its best, I can't sit here and tell you that this is some masterpiece of the arts of gaming or anything, but you go fast, it's fun. These levels are based around, and how could you ever guess it, swift movement on the ice. Taylor Swift is flying her private jet to sue me for saying that line. You jump, you get the thieves to skate with you in unison, it's just neat. The general flow of the gameplay here is so fast-paced and smooth to control that it easily became the type of level I looked forward to the most. Again, not a masterpiece, but sometimes a good old 7 out of 10 time can still put a smile on your face, okay? Don't be a Grinch. Usually the third act of these missions, which take place in the basement, are built in mind with saving the original actor who was meant to play the character in universe. And you have the Super Paper Mario portal looming in the background. This is such a cute twist, and really added another dimension to the levels, I feel like. You see the levels torn apart and dying, although these were usually the shortest of the 3 acts, so it was a bit hard to get that engaged with them. So yeah, the gameplay of Princess Peach Showtime is a mixed bag. There are really good costumes, really bad costumes, and just a middle section that feels all too samey. But what helps all of this is that I genuinely feel like the movement and flow of any level really is really solid. The movement, the jumping, the gameplay, it's just kind of smooth and snappy. So as I said regarding the repetition, it's mostly okay that that's present. Well, I say that though, I do feel like the developers could have gone a lot farther with this general premise for the game. All the costumes feel so underbaked, but unfortunately, I'm just kind of convinced this game didn't receive that big of a budget. It feels like Nintendo maybe didn't have a lot of faith in this product, if I'm being honest, and I feel like this sort of cheap feel holds the game back in a lot of ways. For one, it's kind of inevitable, but I do have to talk about this game's performance. Well, I thought Peach was a pretty good actress in this, but oh, not that type of performance. So this game runs like ass. There's constant frame drops. Even on the loading screens, the in-game cutscenes play out in what I think is 24 FPS, which is honestly really embarrassing. I get that this game is probably for a younger audience, so maybe the developers were hoping no old people on the internet would tear it to shreds in a newfangled game review, but come on guys. Even Scarlet and Violet, as buggy as that game is, it tries to reach 30 FPS. It fails, but it tries. I thought for a second that maybe it was an artistic decision, similar to how movies are supposed to be cinematic, which is why they run at 24 FPS. But like, I don't think that's the case, because cinema is, films. It doesn't really refer to plays. So maybe they were trying to do that, but it's misguided credit. I'm not giving you it.
Technically, plays run in 60 FPS. Because of our eyes. I'm chronically online.
So yeah, usually in my reviews, I'm not really a graphics snob when talking about video games. I mainly just care about the gameplay and if it's fun, but I do have a moral and legal obligation to bring it up when I feel it's distracting to the product. The game just feels low budget. When even the loading screens run in 5 FPS, you know we have a problem. This game not only feels cheap because of the performance, but also just based off of this game's really shallow gameplay, its repetition, and the overall length of the product. There are 30 levels and 4 boss stages, but the game comes out to about 6 hours, which is a really pathetic runtime if I do say so myself for a full price game, and I do, because I just said it. Now, to the game's credit, the boss stages are pretty neat. They don't use any costumes and are more so about Peach's normal gameplay form, which is nice that they reference Stella and that original motif once in a while. There's even one about running through a level quickly, which I actually enjoyed the most. Then there's a few I had to look up what to do because it wasn't clear. I'm just gonna cut out the line where I said this game was for a younger audience. But even with the good bosses on top of the 30 levels, this game has the length and vibe of an afternoon rental. And there are at least some extra tasks you can do in each level. There are sparkle gems, usually upwards of 10 in each level. Unfortunately, getting them all in one go around is a complete nuisance to society, as you can't even backtrack in this game. So if you miss one, you have to play the entire level over again just to get a chance. And you can't just exit area after getting it like in, say, Donkey Kong Country. You literally just have to finish the entire level over again. Well, that's one way to double or triple the length of this game, I guess, and also make me hate it.
Now, I don't want to call anyone out or anything, but I've watched a few reviews where people are like, well, it's just like a play. You gotta get everything perfect in one fell swoop. And maybe that's what they were going for. It doesn't mean it's not annoying.
I always bring this up, but I really prefer the Xenoblade Chronicles mentality when it comes to video games. This basically means I'm okay with sacrificing realism for the sake of the player's experience. In the Xenoblade games, for instance, if you want it to be night, you can change the time on a dime, which makes no sense in the narrative, of course, but it makes your life a hell of a lot easier and eliminates waiting around. In this game, I started out by trying to 100% the first world and completely stopped after that because I wanted to enjoy my playthrough and not just rip a game to shreds that was made to provide joy to people, because I already do that enough. There are also costumes you can buy for both Peach and Stella. I'll admit it, I had a fun time with this function. Leave me alone. It's just that the designs are so cool, like a purple and green dress for Peach, people will look at that and simply go, hell yeah, and I am people. Also in the levels are one sparkly ribbon per level. These are usually a bit more hidden than, say, your sparkle gems by saving this clown. Yeah, I call a lot of things clowns. I know it's mean, but this is a play after all. Also, after the game ends, you can go back into the levels to find hidden feats. Well, if you kept hiding behind a sheet of paper as being hidden. Besides that, there are little mini games you can do outside the story where you master an ability. I guess kind of like Kirby's Return to Dreamland's bonus levels. I found these pretty boring, but there's probably some masochist out there who's going to spend the next year of their life speedrunning it, and wish them good luck in the comments. You know, I kind of wonder if this game is so low budget just because the target demographic is most likely a younger audience. In part, maybe this game just isn't for me. In fact, I was speaking about this game with a friend recently. He said it was decent, but if he had played it while he was a kid, it would have been the most mind-blowing experience. And honestly, I share that same sentiment. That's the joy of being a kid. And honestly, to tie my original thoughts on sort of original releases back, Luigi's Mansion probably would not have been as special to me if I played it first at my old age of 24. I have a feeling in 10 years from now, we're going to see many kids saying how special this product was and how nostalgic this game is for them. And instead of roasting them or judging people who bought it and enjoyed the game even if they aren't children, I feel like it's just better to be nice here and say, yeah, you know what, I'm glad you had a good time with it. The internet does not work that way typically, but moving on.
All right, time for the final act of the show. But first, we'll take an intermission. No, I'm just kidding, that's annoying.
At the end of the show, we have one more Peach transformation after all the feats come together. Now, this is basically just supersonic, right? Like, it's the exact same idea, and I'm here for it. Every character should have a supersonic-esque transformation, including Olimar. Final fight against Grape really isn't anything to write home about. I honestly could have probably just lumped this in with the other bosses, but, you know, pacing. The first phase is basically just shooting, sparkle power at her in the distance. The second phase is now about shooting a prolonged laser. Please end my suffering, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And that's Princess Peach Showtime. Look, it's a fine game. I would go so far as to call it good. Unfortunately, this game just never hits enough of a groove where I would consider it great or anything above a 7 out of 10 at best. It ultimately shows some potential, but it just feels so surface level and never hits its stride. Maybe that was a budget issue, or maybe that's just because Nintendo specifically wanted a filler release in a year that's pretty desolate for the Nintendo Switch. This was written before the Nintendo Direct, so just pretend like that line makes sense. Either way, I'll point back to Luigi's Mansion one last time. There's a lot of similarities between these two games. Both are short, both were clearly released just to have a game out, and both introduce a new world to the Mario universe without needing to over-rely on Mario, which in its own right is pretty cool. And while I might not be the biggest fan of the future Luigi's Mansion games, which we will get to soon, they undoubtedly did expand the concepts of the original in future entries and did a lot right. So I do hope that they try this game again in the future. There was enough charm here where I'm rooting for this to get a really good sequel, and I'm hoping that this doesn't just die to history like Super Princess Peach kind of caused this mini-series to do for a while. It sold actually pretty well, and the Mario franchise continues to thrive with another Super Mario movie coming out soon, so I have a feeling this probably isn't the last we see of the Peach stir. I'm never saying that again, and I'm making it illegal for anyone else to say it too. Just be aware in the meantime though that the game we do have is overpriced and lacking in content. $60 is way too steep, but if you can bring yourself to accept it, I do hope supporting it will lead to them fully considering a future of the franchise. And I think if you could get this game for 30 or 40 bucks, that is more than worth adding to the collection over.
And scene. Oh, thank you. You guys are too kind. We'd like to thank Ninja Star for doing something on this, Turbo Emmy for making the art. Oh, thank you. You don't need to stand up and give me a standing ovation. You really, really don't. We'd like to thank Nintendo for making this game. We'd like to thank YouTube for hosting us. We'd like to do more shows, maybe in somewhere far away, like a world tour, like going to Nevada or something. Oh, thank you. All right. I'll bow.